Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Jocelyn, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur or expert in the economy to tell their stories and unpack the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada, as well as discuss potential solutions for job growth and prosperity. Joining me today and back for return engagement, please welcome to the program Mark Joseph of Kisko Products. Kisko and Mr. Freeze are Canadian icons enjoyed by millions of North American families. Welcome back to the program, Mark.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Good to be with you as well, and thanks for having me back.
And I'm sure you've had a great season. Summer's winding down, and people have been enjoying your freezies. So for those who missed the first show, could you give us a quick overview of Kisko and what you do?
Sure. The only thing we manufacture are freezies, and they're of every size and that you find out there. We also have the licenses for Mott's and Welch's and 100% natural products, organic products. But the story quickly is that our family's from Jamaica. My father was a true entrepreneur, and my mom and himself started a business doing this in Jamaica back in the late 60s. Later on, left Jamaica in the 1975 Christmas Eve, moved to Canada, started over from scratch, going up at the time against a very large competitor who owned the Mr. Freeze brand. And the legacy really was that my father was a man of perseverance and integrity, but perseverance, he just kept hanging in there when he likely should have quit a few thousand times. But we later went on to purchase the Mr. Freeze brand from later on who became Hershey's that ended up owning it. And so it's been about 17 years that Kisko has had the Mr. Freeze and the Kisko brand. And we ship nationally across Canada, as well as into the United States and a few countries outside of.
I just love to hear the stories of the Canadian spirit and people that persevere and don't give up. Warms my heart, and that's what Canadian Innovation is all about. I know that you've returned from a trip from Jamaica where Kisko aided in building a school, and you have some pictures. We're going to look at them, and you can maybe tell us about them.
Sure. Just a quick background is that I'm involved on a board called Helping Hands Jamaica Foundation, and we build schools in Jamaica. We just built our 25th school as an organization, but this was also the fourth school as a family and business that we built. What we've done is we've taken some of our staff down as well as family members, and we're building what they refer to as infant schools or basic schools for kids who are ages 2 to 5, so your pre-kindergarten. And they're usually in rural communities that have very little and poor conditions. There's a great shot of some of the kids there, some of the students. The school that we built is a 5-classroom school that will be able to have up to 100 kids, and right now they have about 70 who are registered, and we had a great time. We had 30 of us that were down there working away, and in the extreme heat. I'm not sure whose idea it was to go to Jamaica in August. Wait, hang on, I think it might have been mine. And it was really being the only time we could get away as a family and staff. And we just had a fantastic 4-day build. And what will happen is over the next few months, the organization that we work with on the ground, Food for the Poor, their guys will go back in, do the plumbing, electrical, playground, all those things, and the students will move in. And just an amazing experience, and especially as we hear the story of how the school started and the family, and it's just, it's great.
Great stuff. Canadian businesses always give back, the ones that I know. I understand that you have some news. You recently sold the business that your father started. Why sell a successful family business?
Well, this is our 45th year, Jocelyn, in business, and it's interesting. This is just kind of a weird thing. Our family moved to Canada Christmas Eve of 1975. My father passed away Christmas Eve of 2007. And the deal on the transaction on the business took place Christmas Eve of 2021. So I'm not sure if it was because God was like, Mark, he knows that I have a poor memory. So God said, okay, I got to give you a significant date. Not sure what it was, but it's just kind of weird. But just, for us as a business, as business owners, as you know, everyone has everything poured into the business. It's not like people often think that, they're business owners, everything's.
So Mark, I got to stop you because we're going to go to break, but we're going to finish the rest of this story when we get back. You're watching Canadian Innovators. We're back. I'm talking with Mark Josephs, president of Kisko Products. Before we went to break, you were telling us how you sold your business and the reasons why you'd sell a successful business. Let's dive right into that and finish your thought.
Well, just really, we look at, as business owners, everything is sunk into the business. And so we looked at the opportunity as a family, as things get more and more difficult in our business environment in Canada, and just overall at looking and saying, how do we get some money out of the business at this point in time? So we still retain part ownership, but we have a great partnership with the company that bought us, Regal Confections, and with a confectionery company with many different brands, and we fit in nicely with their seasonality as well. So they've been a great organization to work with, and really for us, it was something that we felt as a family was the right move at this time.
So I'd like to focus on the topic which is on everyone's mind, which is inflation. Can you tell us how inflation impacts manufacturing, especially the small and medium-sized business?
Jocelyn, it impacts all of us all the way through the consumer. And what I've come to realize is, although I'm not an economics major, is that it doesn't really matter what the government says. All of us as manufacturers knew what the reality was. In 2021, we saw the inflation taking place. We heard from our government that it was just a blip and it was just transitionary, all those things. But you and I knew what was really taking place. And it's been a huge impact because now we had to go to the retailers, and you've got huge double-digit increases that have taken place, not only in 2022, but going into 2023. And so the consumer is ultimately affected. And it's been really hard because this past season, I felt as if someone had literally just taken me and just slapped me back and forth, because we set our prices to our retailers back in September, and thought we had a grasp on increases. But February, March, April, May, some of the very same suppliers were coming back with more and more increases almost every month. And it just got to the point where it was like it's out of control. And so now we're taking a deep breath, trying to look at things as the season winds down and figure out how do we deal with this. Plus, on top of that, inflation has affected, the supply chain as well with freight. I mean, everyone's freight cost is completely out of whack. An example is if we ship to the States for, say to New Jersey, what was previously $1,100, it's now $3,500. And when you agree and have a rate, and you're waiting for pickup the day off, all of a sudden you get a call from the carrier that they have canceled, and because maybe they've got it for a higher rate. So there's a massive impact with things that are out of our control that are impacting our bottom lines at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's really the small and medium-sized business that are really caught between a rock and a hard place. And as everyone struggles with inflation, manufacturers are faced with reduced consumption. Tell us about that and how it impacts you.
Well, there is the whole side of reduced inflation. Consumers only have X amount of dollars to spend on any shopping spree or whatever it is they may be looking for. But one of the challenges as well, too, is we look at gas prices, where we were and where they've gone. Although they've eased up a little bit, we now think $1.50 is a great deal. But we're impacted significantly by that and all the taxes that are there, not only on our fuels, but our natural gas and so forth. So overhead keeps going up, and consumption will drop at a certain point on certain items as consumers have to move to less expensive brands or quantities that they buy in order to make sure they can maintain some type of a budget in their home.
Yeah, it's really a challenge. And I'm talking with many small and medium-sized food manufacturers, and I know they battle with large retailers, the Walmarts, and the large grocery chains, and they put a lot of pressure on you folks for cost reductions that lead to shrinking margins. What can you tell us about the struggles there? We just have about a minute left.
Well, it's a tough go, right? Because we're a very consolidated country when it comes to the grocery industry, much like Australia and Britain. And so if you're not in one, you're losing a large a portion of your distribution there. So it is difficult. And what happens is we move up in price, let's say with a price increase after battling and battling, but then the retailer ends up taking the price up even higher. So they're actually, they're not going to go with, say, $1.19 price point. They'll take it up to $1.49. So they, in fact, pick up some extra margin. But it is a battle, and everyone faces it, and it's just so difficult. During COVID, we had some partnership there during the first year, but then since that time, things are just kind of back to normal with them.
Welcome back. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. My guest today is Mark Josephs, president of Kisko Products. Before we went to the break, we were talking about inflation. Let's talk about the other reoccurring issue that manufacturers are faced with, which is supply chain problems. Hearing that from absolutely everybody. How has supply chain issues impacted your business, Mark?
Well, who would have thought it could be as bad as it is, Jocelyn, for everyone? Let's just take shipping containers, for example, where those who are importing, whether from China, prices went from $4,500 to $30,000 for a container. For us ourselves, we had juice coming in from Spain that was sitting at the port in Spain from December, and we could not get it on a container, and the rates just kept increasing. And eventually, what had been like, a $5,000 load eventually shipped at about $15,000 in the month of March. Forcing us to have to try and do some sort of a spot buy domestically so that we didn't stop production, and of course paying a higher price. So it's happening in every facet of the business. There's no more just in time. That no longer exists. It's now making sure manufacturers are making sure that they have enough inventory on hand in order to take them through just in case their next order doesn't arrive on time for whatever reason. So it's massive implications. It's costing everyone additional money, tying up capital, all those things. And it's just, and we've seen in the auto industry what's taken place with the chip shortages and so forth. So every area, it's been bad. And, I'm not sure when it's going to be rectified, but what I'm hearing is we believe in the industry that we're still going to go through the same pains in 2023. And, if you take even just the local trucking issues, so not even the component side, but Canada is short around 10,000 truckers. And in the US, that number is over 100,000. So it's massive implications and costs for everyone in the industry, and ultimately affecting the consumer.
Yeah, and that ends up when people are faced with inflation, they're also faced with higher food prices because of some of these pressures. I understand from other food manufacturers, and you touched upon it just briefly, that they've had to have additional inventories on hand. And I know some of them have additional inventories that might be expiring because it's a product that has an expiry date. How is that impacting you?
Well, that is true. You can end up having that issue because you brought some extra in and potentially didn't use it all based on demand. But just to give you an example, in order to secure, because let's say for the Ukraine, for example, they're a huge agricultural country, and juices come out of there, grains come out of there, everything. So the impact there's been massive shortages throughout. So we had to lock in and bring juice in from some other countries in July and August that we normally wouldn't bring in until November and January, tying up huge amounts of money. Another situation is corn. Ukraine supplies 25% of the global corn supply, which ultimately is used in different ways, including fructose as a sweetener. And right now, the sweetener companies won't even give us our contracts for 2023 because no one knows what the global supply is really going to look like, because you take the Ukraine out of it, and then you have heat waves that have occurred across the US affecting crops and things like that. So it's massive, the impact what is taking place, but many consumers don't know. except for times when they do go, if you go into some grocery stores, you will see some empty shelves. And I've been through the US recently, and you will see empty shelves in different retailers. And in many cases, it's not even because they can't produce, but it's because they can't get it to store level because the retailers themselves do not have enough truckers. So just massive. It's just crazy what we're going through. But, all we can do is do it one day at a time and keep plugging ahead.
Now, we just have about 30 seconds left. I've heard about the code of conduct for retailers in the grocery industry. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so Retail Council of Canada arguing we don't really need a code of conduct, and the battle goes back and forth and it goes drawn out, because why would they want that when they can currently dictate things? And everybody's trying to figure out how to write this thing. This is really simple. You don't have to ever reinvent anything. Britain, Australia already have a code of conduct. All you have to do is take the framework of what they have, take out what's not relevant here, adapt it, and so forth, and there you go. But this is just a drawn-out battle that continues on.
Well, we need to go to break. We'll be right back on Canadian Innovators. Don't go away. Welcome back. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. My guest today is Mark Josephs, president of Kisko Products. Mark, this is the favorite part of the show that every week I ask my guest if they were a politician, what 3 things they would do to grow jobs and the economy. Mark, you're on the hot seat. What would you do?
Okay, first of all, I would stop focusing on ideology and trying to appease all sorts of special interest groups. And I would focus on what do we need to do to grow businesses and make sure we have enough labor in the market, because as you know, that's a major problem. And also really, we've heard politicians such as Pierre Poilievre speaking about the housing shortage and the fact that municipalities, what it costs and the time and the red tape. So, that's something that definitely has to be dealt with. Not sure how we fix that affordability problem, but something that has to be dealt with. And the third thing would be accountability. When we have politicians who lie and have had so many scandals, and there's no accountability here in Canada, and they can get away with things that you or myself, that if we ever did, we would be charged and put in prison for. That's something that needs to change. And so those are my 3 things.
Okay, those are great things. Mark, let's talk about the challenges with running a business under the current federal government. What say you?
Well, a business we've seen that it doesn't really matter who you are. If they decide that they want to get rid of a particular industry, they've done it with not really keeping anything in mind as to, or not really caring, I guess. We've seen the way they've treated Western Canada, Alberta, with the oil and gas and our natural resources. We've seen what they've done to certain manufacturers where, the whole thing that all plastics are bad, and we've, and just so, entire industry is eradicated. So it's just crazy what's taking place, where there is nothing that's pushing us and allowing us to thrive in the international marketplace and be more competitive.
And it's terrible because we have such great innovation in manufacturing in Canada. How has the climate change agenda impacted food supply in terms of oil and natural gas, fertilizer for farmers, et cetera? How does it impact your business?
Okay. Not sure how it impacts my business, except that costs continue to rise, with carbon taxes and all those things put on for all the things we all use, natural gas and so forth. Ideology, I believe, just cannot be the thing that drives a country. And our government has lost complete focus on what's important. You look at our food supply, and we've seen it from the farmers in Saskatchewan saying that, you want us to eliminate or reduce the amount of fertilizer. Well, then we're not going to be able to feed and grow the crops we need, not only for domestically, but for export, because we're large grain exporters and all the various things. So that's a major issue that we have. And then we also, we've seen where the trickle-down effect, as they kind of clamp down in different areas that impact us all, so costs continue to rise. And we can never, as manufacturers, it's very difficult to regain some of the hidden costs that are there in our selling price to our retailers or in service industry and things like that. So we're being hammered overall.
It is death by a thousand cuts. So we got about a minute left, but finally I'd like to talk about the Blue Box program, which was started under the Liberals and handed off to the PC provincial government. I understand that this is a particular challenge for you. In the 30 seconds we have left, what can you tell us about this?
So basically, a Blue Box program, as manufacturers, over time, they were downloading the costs on us based on how much we produce and stuff and everything. Now it's fully downloaded. And basically what, as the Liberals handed off to the PC government kind of worked a little bit with industry, but then ultimately it was like, you guys figure it out. They handed it off. I'm not a regulatory person, but I'm involved with some groups where they have very smart people who are regs people, and everyone is still lost. And there's going to be abuses that take place in the system because of the way it's structured. But frankly, I think most people still have no idea what they're doing or how they're supposed to do. So this was just a case of, we're washing our hands of it. You guys figure it out, rather than really coming up with a proper plan, listening to industry and working through it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thank you, Jocelyn, for having me.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. Thank you for watching Canadian Innovators. If you're an innovator, tell us your story. Write to us at CanadianInnovators@thenewsforum.ca, and we'll see you next time.